It's Monday. That's right. It is Monday, March 25th, 2024. And of course, I've learned that I believe our good host, Steve Rao, will be meeting Kamala Harris as well as meeting somebody else that is in that space, none other than Joe Biden. I think that meeting is taking place on Tuesday, according to the email that I got, and all along those lines. So it should be a fascinating conversation, and I'm definitely looking forward to hearing what happens in that meeting when it takes place. A lot of people have been paying attention to March Madness and all the things that are going on with the March Madness. So definitely, I'm glad that my alma mater, Marquette, has made it to the Sweet 16. Shaka Smart and that whole gladiator mentality has got him into the Sweet 16, along with four teams from the ACC. So North Carolina State, who is who Marquette will play. Sorry about that, Kim. I will have to root against you. And all along those lines and everything in that space, as well as UNC, Duke, and I believe Clemson. So there's definitely a strong ACC representation and all in that space. So definitely that is something that we are seeing going on in the news and in the sports world and everything. And then, of course, we had a major incident that involved Russia and a concert. So I do know that over the weekend there was a mass slaying, and I believe that ISIS took claim for that and all in that space. But I'm sure that the politicians will be laying blame here and there and everything in that kind of way. But that took place, and it will be interesting to see how Russia responds, just like it was interesting to see how Israel responded when it happened, the Hamas attacks. But in this case, it was ISIS that took claim for that particular situation. But today is also a major day here in Pod TV. So we are glad to know that it is Sasha Starr's birthday. So Sasha Starr is not here. Maybe he's out celebrating and all along those lines, but it is his birthday on this particular day. I'm going to bring in Kim Calhoun, one of the founders of the network, because like I told her, it would be a soft opening on this particular day in terms of world events. I might get to some other ones as well, but I know I've got some things going on outside of Pod TV and everything along those lines. And I think we've got Christina with us as well. So definitely going to bring in Christina and see what she's got to say. And we didn't get to all the things she wanted to talk about last time as well, but definitely always good to see new members of our team that are here with us as well. And of course, we've got Rick Rosner, the amazing Rick Rosner that is here and all in that space. So I'm going to bring in Christina as well. So Christina's here and glad to have her here with us as well. And she is an international project manager and of course was hanging out with Kim and all in that space. But definitely, Kim, how are you doing? And if you want to tell us a little bit about that event that you were part of, I'm sure that our folks would love to hear that because you just came back from Houston. Like I told you before, I think Houston was all over Pod TV because Coco had a Houston musician on her show on Thursday and a pastor that was from that area. So Houston, you have been represented by Pod TV. And of course, we get out there globally and internationally as well.
Well, in the words of NASA Houston, we have made continuity. Anyway, listen up, folks. There is a lot going on out there. So be careful about the news that you're listening to because a lot of those news were not at CERAWeek. CERAWeek, for those of you who do not know, it is when all the world leaders gather together once a year to discuss gas, oil, and energy, which is one of our major commodities for all of our utilities and the majority of our resources. The major conversations that are the buzzwords were hydrogen, renewables, alternative energy sources. They have stated a claim that by 2030, we will have tripled our renewable resources. So I think that that's a very important claim to have made, that we will be reusing a lot of our resources. reusing the plastics that we normally throw away. And we will have tripled that usage by 2030. I wish we would do it now. I don't think there's any reason that we shouldn't be moving towards alternatives. It was very apparent that the United States was very behind the rest of the world. It was very encouraging to hear Japan speak about the fact that they're moving towards more standards in hydrogen, as well as using the nuclear power resources. That was another buzzword. They use nuclear power like it's something new. But what it is that they have learned that it is very safe to use for our resources. And we need to be migrating to smaller nuclear power plants that are distributed around the United States as well as any other country. But you have a lot of alternative means. Solar was spoke about, but for some reason, people just are not as much into solar and wind as they used to be. But I will say this, solar can be used a whole lot more economically the way that they pitch it. They don't pitch it very resourceful. You don't need as many panels as they claim you need on your house. It's based on your power storage. So you can stack more power resources that collect from the solar panels. So there are better ways to install these devices than what has been, and they don't have to be as expensive. So I think that those are some of the important things, as well as it was very promising to hear a lot of people say that they're just tired of the same political banter that we have right now, which is one of the things I do like about Zero Week. It's less on the political platform and more about what's necessary globally. They unite very positive at these panels. But the little background buzz was they're just tired of the Democrats and Republicans, and it would be nice for a change to see someone else in office. I think people are just tired of the bantering that's going on and the complaining and the blaming, and they want to see real solutions. So, maybe we will get there. But right now, I see the U.S. behind the rest of the world.
The oil companies love the current stalemate because the oil companies get billions of dollars in subsidies from the government every year. And as long as the government can't do new stuff, it can't take away those subsidies.
Yeah, speaking of that and everything, you had brought up and you brought it to my attention, and I actually knew that gentleman. I'm hoping to get him here in the not too distant future. But you had sent me over the weekend a Facebook post. It was by a gentleman that is with the African American Farmers Association, and he was actually talking about a gentleman that was actually at that conference because apparently Bill Gates is buying up a lot of farmland, and of course this gentleman was very much concerned about that, and he's part of a Black Farmers Alliance and all in that space based in Virginia. And like I said, I was aware of him even before you sent me that tape and everything along those lines. So I was just wondering our thoughts about this notion that maybe some of our folks that are in the wealthy lands are buying up a lot of farmland, because I want to say that he owned a significant portion in about 8 or 9 different states, including right here in North Carolina and up there in Virginia. But I did check that spot out, and I had been at an event at Haiti, which is, is one of the places that I work at. And there was even people that were speaking about that at that time. But I just wanted your take on some of our bigger folks buying up some of this farmland and making it more corporate land than what it used to be, which was family farms.
Well, I want to add to when you say that they've been receiving subsidies, and there was no bigger subsidy given than the PPP loans to the rich people who had them all forgiven without any accountability. They didn't have to account for spending them properly. They didn't have to pay them back. They didn't even have to report them as tax income when they were forgiven. When, anything else you ever do, if the loan is forgiven, you have to at least report it as a taxed income. So that was probably the biggest subsidy. And, these rich people, that's all they've been doing. All of a sudden you saw the economy flip. It's not affordable for the hardworking middle class American to go out and buy up things and invest. And what they're doing now is they're buying up the land and real estate like crazy. So the goal is, from the background that I've heard, the little buzzing around in the background, is that they want to be able to cause the economy to stay the way it is, so that the middle class American cannot afford to buy a house that they will be forced to rent the rest of their lives. That there is no future for the middle class, nor the students that are graduating from college. They've spent way too much money. They have a debt that's put on them that they would have never qualified for in any normal lending institution standards. And you took their rights away when you gave them those loans. And now they're being required to pay them back. If they're forgiven, they're taxed as if it's income. So you've left no future for the youth here. And I hope that there is an uprising. I keep hearing the students talk about they're sick and tired of the country that we've left for them. And I hope that someone is strong enough to make them rise up and stop what's going on, because there will be no future.
Hey, Kim, along those same lines and everything, I know that we've got Christina with us, and she is definitely
and I do want to ask Christina what her thoughts were on CERAWeek, because this was her first.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. CERAWeek was great. I thought it was an incredible experience. Like we talked about last week, it's definitely outside of the realm of what I normally do. So being there with everything energy, technology, gas, oil, it was basically a new conversation for me. So I loved meeting everybody there, the politicians, the VPs, CEOs. I thought it was a great experience. But Mark, ironically, you brought up the exact topic that I wanted to bring up on last week when we left off. And just talking about Bill and Melinda Gates and their foundation. Right. I don't know if you guys know anything about Appeal and that technology. I believe it launched in 2015, but it's essentially a coating that they put on agriculture. So different like fruits, vegetables, and stuff to preserve them. And it's been a huge controversy because they've put about $1 billion into this company, into African and American initiatives. But a lot of people are saying that it's almost like manipulative, that people with this amount of money are buying up our farmland, and we really don't know what's going into our food, especially organic, because it's not just regular food. Like you could think you're buying the healthy choice in a supermarket, but is a fruit, an apple supposed to last for 30 days? If it was, then why wouldn't have God made it that way? You know what I mean? So what I was reading about it, it's basically the purpose is to extend the shelf life of the crops without refrigeration and to protect them from being eaten by pests, and developing a molecular camouflage from plant extracts used to create an edible, ultra-thin barrier on the crop surfaces. They don't really specify which plant oils they're using, but a lot of them are extremely toxic and oxidative to the human body. So again, for people who aren't knowledgeable about this and they don't know what they're consuming, this could be a big problem. And I know growing up for me, and I'm sure for you guys as well, that, the little saying like an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, people think that, but what's happening when the apples are being, now they're toxic too. So
I want to add to what Christine said, something that came to my attention about 3 weeks ago. They were trying to pass a bill that all fruits and vegetables be labeled properly for the vaccines that they're injecting in them, that they want the humans to have. So they're injecting all of the fruits and vegetables now with vaccines built already in them, so that we get the vaccines they think we need to have, because so many people are against the vaccinations.
That's a great idea. That's absolutely a great idea, because then stupid people would finally be vaccinated. That's
but I
amazing.
don't think everyone needs.
I think everyone should have a choice.
Some people are allergic to the vaccine.
I'm glad they're doing that. Stupid people.
Yes, people need to have a choice, as Christina just said.
Yeah, you should have a choice.
People are allergic to what's in some of the vaccines.
Well,
I know
Yeah, hold on a
Casualty
second.
of war. Casualty of war.
Hold on a second, because I do have a question for Christina really quickly, because one of the jokes that used to be made about some of the healthy food living, and I'm sure you've heard it as well, because we have one here in Durham, is a lot of people will say that Whole Foods is actually whole paychecks, and they'll talk about produce box and all along those things, because a lot of times these things that are supposed to be healthy for you, and I will admit it, I've got a box laying around here somewhere that is a produce box, but they are not always the most economically feasible options and everything. So I just wanted your take on that, because while we love organic food, and my mom was into that organic food, as was my dad, and still are, as far as I can tell, and everything, but we do know that it can also sometimes be more expensive than some of the less good for you food and all along those lines. So I just wanted your take on that, Christina, because it sounds like you are an advocate to some degree for organic food. I just wanted your take, because we know it can be expensive as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. And like I said, with that whole saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, people might think they're making the healthy choice, but with something like an appeal technology that's coating these apples, what are you really eating? And not only is it, the coating that's the problem, but they're also saying that there's a lot of trans fats, exposure to heavy metals that are in these products, as far as lead, nickel, mercury, things that you don't want to consume in the human body. And not only that, I mean, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was an example, but I've also read things such as Burt's Bees has been acquired by Clorox, Pepsi acquired Nika Juice. So it's like these companies that are supposed to be organic and healthy. Do you really want them owned by Clorox or Pepsi? Like things that we're all well aware they aren't healthy for you?
Yeah, just really quickly, because Kim kind of brought it up, and I'm glad Isaiah is with us as well. And I know Isaiah was there with you and your other half at Sarah Week and all along those lines. But I was just wondering y'all's take, because Kim kind of alluded to it. Y'all are part of the younger generation and all in that space, and younger entrepreneurs. But what is your take on the younger generation and how it is feeling about the current political landscape? I mean, there's two guys that are even older than I am. And I'm in my early 60s, but there are two guys that one is in his late 70s and the other is in his early 80s. And one of those two will probably be our president, whether we wanted to or not. So I just wanted, in y'all's communication with folks in that 20, 30, and 40 set, which is what I believe y'all are part of and everything, what has that communications been like in terms of their feeling like their voice is heard, or are they feeling like their voice is being heard?
I mean, outside of voices being heard, especially for me, I'm looking to go into diplomacy. So I've built my, my mindset, my career track on the American dream. And with everything that's gone on in politics over the last recent years, I kind of just hope that we get it together, because I don't know if that opportunity is even going to be there for me in the years to come.
Yeah. What's your take on that, Isaiah?
I believe that, especially with the younger generation, we see that political divide a lot more, because like the younger generation have a lot more fire to fight for in what they believe in. So when they do, they go more to both extremes and try to like make a difference, because they don't feel as their voices are being heard much in this world. I mean, a lot of the politicians are a lot older. A lot of them are not as young. So they don't feel like they can relate too much. So I believe like they're the ones that are the most anxious to see a change in the world.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Sasha, I see we got a birthday guy here in the house, and I was going to ask, and this is slightly changing the topic, but I had mentioned it earlier, and I did see that ISIS laid claim to it, and we do know that with Israel, the whole reason behind the war kind of launched after that tragic and very insane attack that took place there in Israel, and it looks like something similar happened in Russia. And like I did see that ISIS is who is laying claim to that attack at a concert hall and all in that space. But I just wanted your take on that, and also what kind of impact will it have on the war in Ukraine and everything, because I did see that took place this weekend. Some folks apparently were going to see I believe it was a rock or a pop group there in, I want to say it was in Moscow, and they were slain, and that's the only way that you can put it, and everything in that space. But I just wanted your take and what you're hearing, because I do know that you do follow Russian media just like you follow Ukrainian media.
Oh, that's an easy one. Okay, let me tell you that number one, Russia is hosting all the time the terrorist organizations, whether it's Hamas or Hezbollah or Iranian delegations or so on. Now, remember one thing. when these delegations are arriving in Moscow, let's say each one consists of, say, 25 people. Okay, so they had a bunch of meetings, they're leaving. Not 25 people are leaving Moscow. About half of them are staying there to complete their propaganda among the Muslim population in Russia, which is very influential and quite plenty of them. And so they are always working on different projects. And of course, it's all headed by FSB, which is continuation of KGB. Now, if you remember Putin's illustrious career, where he started with the 4 buildings being blown up in Moscow with hundreds of people being dead. That allowed him to mobilize opinion to start a war against Chechen Republic, which is a Muslim republic, and which Putin, on that, he became, on that premises, he became president of Russia. Then what's happened next? The unfortunate terrorist act in Moscow theater, Northeast. There, they used gas on the hostages, and most of them were being killed. And when the doctor who was there, Dr. Rashal, he asked for a recipe of that gas so he could quickly bring the antidote. He was refused and he was not giving that. And a lot of people simply died. And finally, in 2003, Beslan, where hundreds of kids were being killed. So what's the point of Putin doing all these murderous things? To mobilize public opinion, to have complete mobilization, complete control over all society in Russia, and continue his war against the West, against Ukraine, and against all world, apparently. So that's a very, very simple thing. There is nothing to guess. There is nothing to think about it. That's I want to say about that.
Hey, Sasha, just really quickly, and I don't know if other folks want to jump in, but there are some people that are speculating, like you just said, that it was self-inflicted and that maybe ISIS did not do it, and that it was a way to divert attention from the Ukrainian conflict and all along those lines. And I'm sure that even our own local politicians, as well as national politicians, will get in their 2 cents worth, even though I have not actually seen their responses as of yet. But I was just wondering, is that what you are thinking? Is that it was a situation where it was them attacking their own people, or is it kind of like what Malcolm X said, the chickens will come home to roost if you put certain situations into certain causes and everything? So I just wondering your take on this and whether this is something that was self-inflicted.
In reality, it doesn't matter. What matters is that about 150 people died, and numerous people are in the hospital, and nobody knows how many of those. And that's the reality of life in Russia. It's okay, you can only guess. Are you going to be killed by terrorists, or are you going to be killed by KGB?
It's too soon to tell, but Russia claims they have the 4 attackers in custody. So we'll learn more. And not everything that happens in Russia is a conspiracy or a Putin-led conspiracy, which leads me back to Bill Gates. Not everything Bill Gates, I believe Bill Gates is fairly earnest in the efforts he makes to make the world a better place. I don't buy a lot of the Bill Gates conspiracies with small farmers. The main pressure on small farmers are monopolies at various points in the chain that farmers sell to. For instance, if you're a rancher who raises beef or pigs or whatever, there are only 4 major slaughterhouse companies in the country. They set the price for meat, and that pressure runs small ranchers out of business. They have to sell off to the big corporations who can do farming at immense scale. So it's monopolization that is driving small farmers out of business.
But Rick, and this is a question for Christina, and Sasha wants to jump in, and definitely Isaiah and even Kim. Isn't that part of the problem in general? Because I know that later on we'll have a media show, and as y'all know, I come from the background of media, and I do know for a fact that even in the media, there are certain, whether they want to call themselves monopolies or not, monopolies that pretty much control things in that space. If you are anything, and I think Christine, if I remember correctly, you're in the event planning space, so you are very much familiar with Live Nation, and Live Nation is very much a controller of a lot of events, just like Clear Channel is, and a number of others. And I know, Kimberly, you were in the telephone industry, so you do know that, or telecommunications, so you do know that there were a number of monopolies that existed in there. And there are some people that would say that those monopolies still exist. So are we in the danger of being overly monopolized? I guess that's the question I'm asking everybody. And I'd love to hear y'all's take on that based on what Rick said.
Well, I'll let Christina take the first hit.
Yes, I'm also in health and wellness. But yeah, I mean, I believe to some extent it does become a problem because, like I said, not a lot of people are educated on this stuff. And another example is the Bragg's apple cider vinegar. I don't know if you guys know anything about that, but for years, people have thought that taking a shot a day of that is great for your health. But they also don't know that Bill Gates now owns that as well. And they're changing the products using that appeal technology. So you don't really know what you're consuming. And I just looked it up actually. And the Bill Gates Foundation owns 111,000 hectares of farmland. So that's, I mean, multiples of acres, but a lot, $113 million worth. And the appeal technology is worth almost $1 billion. So with that kind of, I mean, power, you can do whatever you want, like without the American people really being aware of it, because they don't even know which companies are involved. And you're buying up, like you said, monopolies.
Kim, I don't know if you want to
have to agree with Christina. I want to add to that you have no idea what other companies have been buying up the land that they own as well. There are just so many things that go on behind the scenes, smoke screens. I will say this, what I feel like about Bill Gates, and I don't know him personally, but he reminds me kind of the mentality of Jesse Helms, Senator Jesse Helms. He just feels like he is smarter than any other average human being out there, and that it's his duty to make the laws and do the things to do what's right in our best interest. He feels like that is what he needs to do. And so he's going to buy up everything and own everything and be our father or our God or whatever. And so I feel like he's just got that Senator Jesse Helms attitude, because I remember speaking with Helms one time, and he said that. He said, the North Carolinians are just too stupid, and it's up to me to do the things that are right for you guys. And I'm like, God, I wish they knew that before they voted you in. I was very young. I was probably Christine and Isaiah's age when I was working on the projects where I got to meet with some of these people. And it was just eye-opening to me that they truly believed that it was their position to do that. It was almost like they were just so empowered with the responsibilities that they gained over the years. They just felt like that they were our God. So I want the young people to be careful and be more conscious about who you're electing into office, and start standing up for your rights. But start putting people into office, not parties, and make people get a more democratic country again.
Well, I'll help you guys out here since you need a little help. Bill Gates is smarter, way smarter than the average American, not even close. So the thing is, when he's doing things in this way that you consider to be benevolent, despot, that's basically what he is. But please don't equate him with the average IQ of the average American, which is like 100 if they're lucky. And this guy's like 160. I mean, give me a break. So he is smarter. Get over it. Humble yourself. And yeah, he's buying up land. Good for him.
I have something to say.
He did Microsoft. Good for him. And the thing is, all I can say is good for Bill Gates. Bad for stupid people in America, but not bad because actually he'll do good for stupid people in America, which is very sad to say. And yes, my wife's family did know the Gates family very well when they lived in Laurelhurst, which is a suburb of Seattle, and they all went to the same school, which is in Seattle. And the thing is, he is, just get over it. He is smarter than you. Maybe not smarter than Rick Rosner, but everybody else on this panel.
Christina has something to say about that.
Yeah,
He's smart everybody on this panel except for maybe Rick Rosner.
Christina and then Rick.
I'm not discounting his intelligence. I mean, obviously,
He can't.
very
So I just
intelligent
looked
because he is
it up.
smart. Huh?
Christina,
Okay.
go ahead.
I just
Anyway,
looked it up. As of 2022, Bill Gates owned 1/30 of 1% of America's farmland, which is still a huge, amount for any one or his foundation to own. But it's not like he's, that's 1/30 of 1%. I'm on the spectrum. I don't always come across. Bill Gates is definitely on the autism spectrum, which means, his social cues, the way he comes across. Sometimes he comes across as creepy, but that doesn't mean he's dumb. It just means, he's not maybe as slick as other people.
Yeah, and you really want slick, stupid people running the country, which is what we have right now, which is the reason the country is in such horrible condition, is smart people like him don't get involved enough, and I'm glad he is getting involved. He even predicted this whole stupid COVID-19 debacle.
Well, it's easy to predict it when you're controlling it.
He's not controlling it. Give me a break.
No,
small minds of America. This guy is a sharp SOB. He's not in your category. Get over it.
I think
you're going to criticize Bill
I want to
Gates,
get from Christina.
get to half the level of Bill
Let me get from Christina.
Yeah, I'll wait until they're done.
Like a 900 player telling a grandmaster how to play chess. Please don't do that. But go on, 900 players. Go ahead and talk. You have the right to talk.
Yeah, that's not the problem.
The
problem is, I mean, for example, I was reading something the other day about Elon Musk, and they were saying, even though you can't, like, I'm not saying they have malicious intent. I'm saying with that type of power, they're building a platform to be able to take over in a big way that the American people don't have a voice in it. Like, for example, all of the charging stations that are being bought up in the country are owned by Tesla. Now he owns Neuralink, which is the microchip that's going into the brain. He also owns Twitter, which is the social platforms, and he's collecting all of this data. So you're saying it's basically like a platform for Lex Luthor, whether he's going in with malicious intent or not. Eventually, there comes a point like, how much power should one person really have? And it's the same thing with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Why are they buying?
That's a good point. But I'm looking it up. But Musk is like a cross between Trump and Bill Gates. Musk is a really smart guy, but he thinks every single thought he has is brilliant. He's sold on his own brilliance, and he doesn't, exercise due diligence over his ideas. And he's all red pilled right now. He was fairly liberal, say 3 years ago, before he bought Twitter. Now he listens to right-wing lunatics all the time and amplifies those guys on Twitter. And, he's kind of a mess. Yeah, he's done some great stuff, but he's, he believes in a bunch of garbage too.
He did a big number on Congress, getting them to pay for the charging stations. I mean, and this goes back to the stupid people we have running the country. Why would they pay to put charging stations all over the country for Elon Musk? Is beyond. Why does Congress pay to fund SpaceX? So if you want to put the blame, put it on the teeny little meanie minds of Congress who are funding the crazy dreams of Elon Musk.
No, hold on a second, because Jacoby's got a point, and I know that
Jacoby, I woke him up, baby.
Yeah, Jacoby is actually a fan of something that you're not a fan of, that I'm a fan of, which is internet for all, or internet for most, and everything. But I just
no, I'm not. No, internet's fine for all, Mark, but we as taxpayers do not pay for it. You pay for it, please.
Jacoby, your take
on
there's been a whole conversation around Bill Gates and the Bill Gates Foundation and some of the negative things that they've been doing, which Christina and Isaiah, more Christina, have brought to our attention.
So I think the issue really revolves around the fact of we've got to understand that there has to be some type of regulation or understanding of what's going on, some clarity. And yes, there are things that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have done that were a little that were bad. Same thing with the Clinton Foundation. Same thing with all these other foundations that are out there. However, I'm not more so worried about Bill and Melinda Gates because of their activities. Elon Musk is the issue. And the reason, to answer your question, Nick, about why do we and why is this? Because what Elon did, well, Elon really didn't do it. It was what Tesla did, because Tesla was at the forefront of actually electric vehicles, and they created a charging station. Currently, there is a push for EVs across the nation and actually across the globe. And what Tesla did is they actually have the charging stations that work really well, and so they are creating that infrastructure. The reason that the U.S. government doesn't do it is because of exactly what you're talking about. Of, hey, we can't pay for this, or we're not going to pay for this. Why is it NASA going to space compared to SpaceX? Because we've cut funding to NASA so much that they cannot do it. So we're having to do more of the public-private partnerships. Hence the reason, again, going back to the Tesla issue. I'm not worried about the Tesla creating the infrastructure, because that was on the way and that's got to be regulated and so on and so forth. Same way the SpaceX is. What I am more so worried about is the fact that Elon Musk has his roots tied into the U.S. government more so than any other person, more than Bill and Melinda Gates. Elon Musk, he's the one who's controlling the actual internet over in Ukraine at this moment. So he can actually do similar to actual Russia and China and create a propaganda system to where those Ukrainians are unable to receive the information that they need from the outside world and actually see what is really going on in their area. He's done the same with other areas. So Elon has his ties within actual government entities, and that is more so scary than, again, the Bill and Melinda Gates. They can buy up the land. China's buying up land. There are other entities that are buying up land that I'm more so worried about than what Bill and Melinda Gates are doing. It's just the Elon Musk, and as Rick pointed out, his right-wing ideologies that have now come to fruition based on his Twitter and his owning of Twitter, changing it to X, allowing more anti-Semitic, racist, bigoted things being pushed more. So it's becoming a glorified 4chan more so than actually an information system that it used to be.
Hey, well, by the way, Jutopia, are we surprised at his right-wing rants? I mean, the man did
Yeah,
come
he
from
wrecked Twitter,
apartheid South Africa, if I remember correctly, and everything. So he definitely came from that background. So are we overly surprised by some of the
there's some indication that maybe his family is. Well, yeah, it's surprising that a smart guy would buy so much bullshit from people. But
You were saying this is
but the
family.
deal is
What were
that
you saying,
technological progress often involves making jerks rich. Thomas Edison, our greatest inventor, was a prick. The reason that the movie industry is in Los Angeles is because 110 years ago, the industry moved west to get away from Thomas Edison's thugs beating you up and wrecking your cameras if you didn't use his cameras. So jerks have always, I mean, the people who built the railroads were not nice, so it's part of, economics, I guess.
So again, I won't say that I'm shocked that him being so intelligent, he's buying into this. A lot of the people in the anti-vax movement are really intelligent people. A lot of people in the flat earth movement, ironically, are very smart people. It's just the things that people buy into. That's all it is.
Speaking of things that people buy into, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, I know we're going to pivot just slightly into something that is a slight passion of mine, particularly in the month of March and everything. But, a lot of these athletes, and there are a number of athletes that are involved. There are 16 teams now that are in the Sweet 16, and a number of them have NIL deals. But my thing around the NIL deals is it does seem to be helping them in terms of financial assets and all along those lines, but I don't know when they get these NIL deals, and this is coming to a point that Nick brings up all the time, whether they are learning enough about fiscal literacy. So I'm afraid that some of them may be winding up in the way of our lottery winners and then losing a lot of money, even though they've got some great deals. I mean, I know that Baycott at UNC, a couple of the state players, definitely some of my Marquette players, and a number of others have these super duper NIL deals, but I don't know that the NIL deals are teaching them about fiscal literacy, which I know is something that this network is very big on. So just wondering y'all's take on that, since this is definitely March Madness, and I don't know that people are actually financially aware even after they get these windfalls.
Look at the pros. Most NFL players, former players, end up bankrupt at some point. I think the NBA does a better job of teaching financial literacy. The NCAA was formed to protect college athletes, and then it turned into a kind of a persecutor of like any college athlete who got any kind of a deal. I'm hoping they live up to, their original purpose. And, I mean, we've got these kids in college, so there's a whole institution around them. Somebody, while they're kind of locked down in the college system, should be working with them to make sure that the like Deion Sanders kid, I mean, at least that family knows what superstardom is, and so when he makes $4 million a year via licensing his name, he's got people around him who might say, do some smart stuff with those millions. So it's a big deal, but it's much more fair to kids now to star athletes than the schools making all the millions from them.
Saying, Christina, how much were y'all taught about financial literacy when y'all were in school, whether college or high school, or a number of other things? I just wanted y'all's take, because I do know that Nick and Kim are big on fiscal literacy. It's part of the reason for this network being formed and everything. So I just wondering, how much were y'all taught about fiscal responsibility?
Absolutely zero. I mean, to be honest, everything I taught myself about financial literacy, and I learned a lot. I go to school for international business. So university level, I mean, if you're in that field, obviously they're going to teach you. But as far as middle school, high school, we had none of that.
Yeah, I myself taught myself how to invest in the stock market, because in the university they never teach you anything about stock market or anything, how to look at investments. And a really interesting thing that I learned throughout the years, like what Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger taught, was to look at nature. You had to learn the laws of nature, because you have to know what reality is, and if you know how to live in reality, you can make any organism thrive in it. And that's something that's not connected in universities. They don't connect all the disciplines together to really teach you how to move around the world.
Yeah, right.
The entertainment industry has the Jackie Coogan law, which is based on a 1930s child star whose parents, stole all the money he made. And so now, if you're a kid making a ton of money in Hollywood, there are laws that stop they're supposed to stop your family from stealing all of it. And I believe to put a chunk of it away in a trust for when you aren't a child star anymore. And you could certainly look at legislation that would protect, college superstars, that would force them to protect some of their money for the lean times in their futures.
Yeah, that would be an actually good idea, and would be a good idea to teach financial planning in high school. And this is my reason all the teachers should not be given a raise in the United States of America, and all of them should be fired. Because if they're not teaching it, they're really doing a disservice to their students and to their community. And you're right, Rick, they should set aside a certain percent in a trust every year. But I don't think that in high school they teach you about trust at all. So no one even knows what it is. But they should teach it, and they don't. And they should not get raises. They should all be
Nick, hold on a second. I got two friends.
I would fire every one of the high school
Nick, hold on a
teachers
second. I got two friends that just recently got
given
elected
this
to our
incompetent
local school
school
board.
that we
So
have.
are you saying that we need
I
to
think
fire the
Sasha
entire
has
school
a
boards
statement.
around the country and everything because they're not teaching fiscal literacy? Because I just
That's right. I'd fire every teacher. Every
I don't
high
necessarily
school
think
teacher
it's the
that does it.
teacher's fault. I think that they're given a curriculum.
Well, you're right,
abide
Christina.
by.
It may not be the teacher's fault. Maybe the administration fault, which
Agreed.
is usually the problem to begin with. Thank you for correcting me. Is that the administration, which, by the way, in the last decade or so, the biggest growth is school administrators. It's not teachers. So the administrators screw them, but whoever's behind this whole idea of screwing our students out of an education, which they've done for decades, needs to be held accountable, whether it's the school administrator, the school boards, or the teachers themselves. And they need to bring in investments as a course. Real estate needs to be in their Medicine needs to be in there, and law needs to be in there. And get rid of Latin. Latin's a waste of time. Get rid of theater. Get rid of music. Get rid of all that garbage stuff.
Pythagorean theorem.
Yeah, right. As somebody
get rid
said,
of teacher
"Why did you my
unions,
taxes this
which
year? The
don't allow
Pythagorean
you to
theorem
fire
will
any
help
of the
me out."
teachers.
Get rid of it. Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Algebra 3, all a waste unless you want to be an engineer. Forget it. So we'll bring in Sasha Starr, who basically heads our investment program in the Pod TV network. Got to bring you on,
Sasha.
Okay, here's what I want to say. My late grandfather taught me one interesting thing. The only people who drown are those who know how to swim. What that means? People who don't know how to swim, they will not go to river or to the sea or so on. They will not swim, period, and therefore they cannot drown as well. Now, those people who know how to swim, some of them know how to swim, but not well enough. Some people know well how to swim, but they're just not a good swimmer, and therefore they will drown if something happens. Now, about financial literacy. There is the most important element, not only in that, but in that just as well, is a curiosity. If people curious enough, they will find all kind of information on YouTube or any other sources, and they will know as much as they want about any single subject, about financial literacy, about stocks, about investments, about anything. Now, people who are not curious, and majority of people are not, actually, I'll venture to say that majority of people are morons. So how are you planning to teach morons something that they're absolutely not curious enough and they don't care, frankly, enough? How are they going to teach? You're wasting your time, you're wasting their time. If you want to do something positive for these people, tell them to sell everything what they have, the furniture, the car, whatever, buy NVIDIA stock and stick with that for the next few months, and you make a lot of money. And then you'll go and buy new furniture, a new car, and everything else what you did.
I think you're referring to adults, though. If they were teaching this to children from a young age, then it would be completely different. Of course, if you're not learning it in school and they're giving you things like home ec and teaching you about shapes and, you know, things that you're not actually going to apply in the real world, then you don't know what you don't know, right? So these people are getting older and they don't know what to ask about financial literacy and things like that. For me, like as a child, I always knew how to sell. I had like an entrepreneur mindset and I could sell anything. I just didn't know what to do with the money once I had it. And I taught myself that in my 20s.
So what are you doing with the money that you have?
So about one-third of state
investments, you know, stocks.
We have mandatory classes in financial literacy in high school.
I'm sorry?
Right.
What'd you say, Rick?
About one-third of the nation has mandatory financial literacy classes at the high school level. In the next year or so, it looks like California will be voting on doing that. But that just because you sat and, you know, bored through a class in financial literacy doesn't mean you'll make good decisions. You know, the Jackie Coogan laws for showbiz families are, you know, notoriously not super smart, you know, on average. And, you know, sports families aren't necessarily going to be super smart. So some of this stuff should be covered by legislation.
Hey, I got a question for Jacoby because I brought it up, and I definitely think that fiscal literacy, I've said it before, I said that's part of the reason of the network being founded. I think that I can say that fairly, Kim, and I know Nick's in the background, and all along those lines, I know there were other things, including wanting to give people voices that didn't always have voices, and all in that space. But Jacoby, I'm hearing them say that we don't necessarily need theater and arts and some of the creative fields, and you are in that lane. I don't necessarily agree with them. So I was wondering your take on that, because I think that it sometimes can teach critical thinking and all along those lines. But I wanted to know your take as you are in the esports lane and definitely have some friends in the creative space as well.
Well, I think the issue comes into play is that we're thinking about our personal lives and not the lives of everybody as a whole. True, financial literacy is a very important thing. But not everybody is going to go into stocks. Not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody's going to be the one who's going to be a banker. So we have to think about it as a whole. Yes, it would be great if every kid started out having financial literacy, but that means we have to add that in. Honestly, it's even better if every kid had coding ability, because Sasha's talking about investing in NVIDIA stock. What is NVIDIA's stock rising because of? AI. That's it. So if you can have all the financial literacy smarts in the world, but AI right now is going to take over that. So you should have coding instead of that. What it is we're not thinking about things as a whole. We're thinking of things that would have helped me. As a whole, yes, financial literacy is important. Never say it won't be, but so is AI. But people don't want to take, some people aren't really into financial literacy, but they're into AI and coding. So are you going to take away the ability for them to understand coding because you feel that financial literacy is more important? No, that's incorrect for that individual. So
it goes beyond that, though. Doesn't everybody pay bills?
Coding is more important than financial literacy.
You need to know how to manage a budget, your overhead. You need to
if you have AI, you don't need that. Honestly, right now, AI is running stocks now too.
I mean, AI doesn't do my
analytics actually does better in terms of picking the Final Four stuff than actually even going to a bookie. So when you're talking about things that are important, we have to think about it bigger than just as important to just us and we see, because somebody else may see AI as more important, because honestly, it is. If geometry, mathematics is more important, we're talking about why can't we why is NASA, not doing this, but SpaceX is, because they have people doing theoretical physics. Oh, well, that's important as well. Most of our technology comes from NASA. NASA wasn't about financial literacy. NASA was about science. So science being more important than financial literacy could be an option for some people. So
Toby, if you could get AI to pay my bills next month.
Okay, well, honestly, there is a program that can do that.
100%.
There is a program.
Okay, so I want to interject here just for a second, because I watched the Senate when they were trying to figure out what to approve and not approve. And I want you to take a long look at the current situation of our country and the way that they spend money. And if you compare it, to a very simple example of a family who earns $40,000 a year and are spending $75,000 a year, that family is going to crash and burn. That family is going to end up foreclosing on their house or get ejected from their home. But our Senate, our Congress who are doing this, no, you don't do anything to them. I think what needs to happen is when they behave this way, foreclose on their houses, foreclose on their ability to walk into office. Because if you ran your business this way, you would go down the tubes and you would look bad. They should be disgraced. They should be ashamed of themselves. Nobody runs a company this way, and nobody should run a country this way. That is the best example you can have of how this country is doing. And instead, they print more money to pay their bills. Can you do that?
Kim,
Christine, can you do that?
Our technology.
We're not a business.
What you just
The
said
country is not a
is
business.
an obvious question to you. Then how the country can even think about electing a president who had number of bankruptcies, impeachments, indictments, and everything else? Can you make any sense of it? Huh?
It's a cult.
All right, so our technology comes from a push for math science education that began in 1958 and ran through the 60s and 70s when the U.S. freaked out that the Soviet Union was the first to put a satellite in orbit. And then in the past 20 or 30 years, there's been a push against education from the right to suckify public education so they can glom the funds for charter schools and private schools. And that's led to the end of music education and art education. And we would be smart to support public education, and if we want to maintain technological superiority versus China, and India and the rest of the
And,
world.
and Rick,
also just
Rick, hold on a second. I've got to push back on you on something, because one of the biggest proponents of charter education is actually a family friend and everything, and he's actually African American. So I can't say that it is strictly a right wing push for charter education, because Howard Fuller is actually
There are some good, earnest,
is actually a proponent
there are some
of
good,
charter
earnest
education.
people who want
But-
to give people choice via charter schools, but there are also a lot of charlatans like the DeVos family, the billionaires who, you know.
Yes, charter schools. There are goods and bads with charter schools. The
Right.
problem is charter schools are taking a lot of money away from the public school system, and the public school system has a larger group of individuals that are being serviced that need the actual money, and charter schools are coming in and wiping that out. And that's becoming a huge problem in the public school system. So therefore, you have a lot of kids that are getting left behind due to charter schools. So there's a big balance there that's a problem. On top of that, to get back to the school system within itself, there are a lot of kids that are being serviced that don't have that. We are taking so much money out of the public school system, and we are fighting against, quote unquote, the free lunch idea, where many of the kids that go to school get their only meal from public schools. And there is there's data on this in terms of the hunger. Hunger is one of the biggest reasons why kids do not learn. And if we're talking about trying to educate kids and, create a smarter society, honestly, free lunches is something that has to happen, and we have to put the public funds behind that. And
it's cheap. I mean, buying a kid a lunch every day is not very much money.
That's very economical. I know we're winding down, but just really quickly, the other thing I was going to add to that.
Real quick,
Christina or Isaiah, I don't know if Christina and Isaiah agree and everything, but I am also a big fan of us having knowledge of history, because I know that there is a push to get rid of some of the history courses as well. But I think that it even comes back to something that Sasha talks about, that if you don't know your history, you are bound to repeat it. It is kind of a cliche remark, but it is very much a true remark as well and everything. So I think you need to have those history content and history context. That's the word I was looking for. History context, in order to understand even some of the things that are going on today and everything.
That's a very big thing. History is very important. Honestly, that's what Rick just brought up, was history about our past, which actually led to a better future for us. So these things are extremely important. And just to answer Lee's question, why are students choosing to go to charter? A lot of students really aren't choosing to go to charter schools, but some are, because they're nicer schools. They have more money. The public school system is falling apart because a lot of these charter schools are taking away the money. So therefore, as a kid, you want to go to the nice place. Also, why aren't parents feeding their children? Because they don't have money. If you're poor, you can't feed your child. You're trying to decide between keeping the lights on or whatever else you can pay just so you can get to the school the next morning. Matter of fact, the issue that was going on in Durham, where we had individuals, we had people that are working in the public school system, living in their cars and putting their children in hotels so the children can stay warm, so they would be able to go to work in the next morning. These things happen. And that's why I'm a big advocate. And Christina, I mean, anytime you'll see, I hate dealing with, this is what I see. No, this is about everybody. We have to really think outside of the box, because a lot of times we get trapped in ourselves. So that's why my argument is always going to be, I'm not, when Mark says, well, you're in esports lane. Yes, so what? I want to talk about this other lane, because that's where I have to be out of, because if I can empathize with somebody who's struggling and understand where they're coming from, that helps me help them and help myself. Because there was a school that I taught at where kids, it was an at-risk youth school, or a school that dealt with at-risk youth. And these kids were coming out of prison. And these kids were telling me stories that I didn't even think about. How a lot of them, when we talk about, hey, why are these kids going to jail? Why is there so much recidivism? They don't see any help for them. They really don't. They go back to jail because that's where they feel comfortable. They go back to jail because they can't get a job, because they're saying, hey, I want to work. Well, they're getting denied, and they're not even getting that second interview because not because they did bad in the interview. It's because people have a fear of them and there's stigma around them. So, okay, well, I'm not going to hire you, and you go back to jail. That's a problem.
Millennials don't have the money. Boomers have the money.
Yeah.
People 45 and older have 94% of the privately held assets in America. And that means that the generation of parents and kids, they're living paycheck to paycheck, or even worse than that.
Yep. And just really quick, it's time to wrap up and everything.
Financial literacy, or the lack thereof.
The lack thereof.
I mean, not everybody's got to be an expert in the stock market. That's not what I'm saying, because that is, a personal, I think, motive. But you need the basics. You need to know how to make your money, what to do with it, what percentage to keep, what to expense, and a lot of people don't know that.
Well, also,
That's
a lot of
very
people
true.
don't know, when you say how to make the money, if you give them an idea that, hey, you need to be a builder, well, let me focus on being a builder. Let me figure out what I got to do to be a builder. Financial literacy, we can do the basics of it, but we still have to focus on history, art, music, everything else that broadens the mind and gets them outside of themselves.
I agree.
Yeah,
They get trapped.
definitely on that. And on that note, we're going to get on out of here. It's been another lively discussion and all of that fun time. I think that Christina and Isaiah will be joining us on a regular basis. So I'm glad to have
I
this
love it.
news voice and everything.
I love
So
this
definitely-
channel.
Yeah. So looking forward to seeing them on a regular basis and giving us some more insight. But right now we're going to go to the Economics Monday show, and we're going to go to hopefully Media Monday as well. But right now we're getting ready to get on out of here. And hopefully I'll see you, Christina, as well as Jatovia and others on Economic Monday. And I'm glad that you enjoy this channel, because I have enjoyed it as well. So glad that you're part of the family.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Peace out.
Bye.